Leslie Lee III on Monday exposed the selective outrage of the DSA types and the progressives who blew this whole infiltration into the March for Medicare for All out of proportion. Because when it comes down to it, this is essentially a prank that someone did on the organizers for the March for Medicare for All. And Leslie and I referred to a moment. Oh, I wonder how DSA would handle a similar scandal in their organization. And Leslie Lee III exposed the selective outrage of that. By the way, Leslie Lee III, you should subscribe, follow his show, Struggle Session, on Twitch, twitch.com/struggle session. And also support his channel on sesh.plus. But let's get into some of the responses to this. When DSA elected a cop organizer to a national leadership position, and all the Dems who already didn't like DSA wrote the whole organization off as pro-cop and racist, it took weeks to resolve the situation. And that took I think 4 to 6 weeks based on the dialogue that happened here. Let's see some of the replies. That's good by Beth, who supports the organization for the March for Medicare for All, happening in 34 cities across the country, Saturday, July 24th. Sounds bad. So, this cop person, his name is Danny Fitante, and there's several articles about it, but I'm going to look for the people who have made this who have decided to make this a situation where their selective outrage has decided to still make what just happened on Sunday far worse than this. So I want you to think about for a moment a cop in DSA. If there's one thing that is counterproductive to socialism, it's cops. And this guy right here argues that DSA quickly dealt with the situation. No, they didn't. That took a month to 6 weeks, based on the estimation that I saw when I tried to look up some articles before the show started. It's trying to, and yes, the March for Medicare for All responded within hours. And this right here took weeks to get resolved. And there were still people within the DSA who are still trying to advocate for letting this cop into a national position. And you want to say that what happened with the infiltration on that March for Medicare for All was worse? How hard is it to see which case was clearly worse here? And Leslie Lee responding to someone. It's also a simple and quicker process for someone to make a graphic after being pranked for one day volunteer event than it is to elect a cop organizer to a national position. That's a way bigger failure by a socialist organization. Okay, are you people for real? Actually electing a cop to power is a bigger failure than falling for a prank If you disagree, you are a dipshit. That's flat out truth, Leslie. And that's what these bird brains, who are supposedly on the left but are trying to dismantle this March for Medicare for All, don't get. How hard is it to see that letting a cop in a position of power is worse than something, this infiltration, which was more like a prank when it came down to it? See, this is why leadership even tried to protect him. And you're trying, and this broken brain is trying to justify this being less bad than what had happened with the March for Medicare for All. This is weird. And here's another person who doesn't get it. The NPC fucked up. A member pressure forced Fatante out. This is such a dumb argument. Promotion a literal Nazi with the most obvious alias is way worse than the Fatante affair. Just take the L and stop posting through it. Pinko Machinist, you're the one who is shit posting through a L of being on the wrong side of this argument right here. Although it was a mistake by the March for DSA, this Nazi who got through the cracks by the slight alteration of his name, never got officially platformed, and they fixed it within hours of it coming out. Not anywhere the same as this DSA fuck up, and there are still people in the organization who are trying to make sure that this cop organizer got through. Leslie Lee says, voting to put a cop organizer onto national leadership into real power twice is 100 times worse than falling for a prank, and if you disagree with it, you've lost the fucking plot. 100 times, maybe generous. It's 1,000 times, it could even be 1,000 times worse when it comes down to it. Especially when you got these shit posters who are still trying to divide the potential organizing efforts of the March for Medicare for All. And once again, this is something that could have been solved far quicker than what it was. And do not equate those, because there were not people in the March for Medicare for All trying to defend the inclusion of this questionable Nazi being a speaker in this march. And the fact that there's people like peak capitalism trying to frame that as being worse is utterly absurd bullshit. And anyone who can't see that is fucking brain dead. And it's great that Leslie Lee III exposed this full peak of hypocrisy that people have when it comes to the whole outrage that these people, the DSA, anti-March for Medicare for All people, had when it came to organizing for this event.